What is going on, everybody? We have part 6 today. We're going to talk about should you train to failure or not. Now, this is a pretty passionate topic in the fitness field. I've kind of learned that because I made a couple of posts on my Instagram about it. Some people are really passionate saying you should train to failure, and some are passionate saying you shouldn't train to failure. So it's going to really depend on a few factors, and I'm going to tell you a story about my experience about really pushing to failure and training hard compared to kind of backing down a little bit, and then I'll give you some nuances and you'll really know when you should train to failure on certain exercises and when not to. So for those of you who don't know, and you can find this post on my Instagram, it's Rich Biker Fit on Instagram, so Rich Biker Fit, maybe I'll link it in the show notes or in the YouTube notes here. I was diagnosed with a heart condition in November 2021. I'm not going to get into exactly what it is because no one cares. I'm just basically trying to tie this into the post. And basically when I got diagnosed with that condition, I had to stop lifting heavy weights because it would stress my heart too much. So for the last about almost 3 years now, heavy weights have been off limits for me. I posted before and after from November 2021 to July 2022. And I showed the difference basically, and if you check the picture out, you'll see I definitely got a lot more muscle and even a little more leaner at the same time when I stopped taking all my sets to failure. And we'll break down why that was happening here in just a minute. So, should you train to failure or not? It's gonna depend on a few factors. Number one, if you're a bodybuilder, which I'm assuming you're not a bodybuilder watching my channel, if you are, this doesn't apply to you, then yeah, you can probably talk yourself into, pushing to failure a little bit more, depending again on a few factors, which we'll talk about in just a minute. However, if you're just like a general folk, maybe, I'm 34 years old, but let's say you're 25 to 55, and you're looking just to lose some stubborn fat and maybe add some lean muscle, the juice probably isn't worth the squeeze. You can still get fantastic results. You don't have to kill yourself at the gym because, let's be honest, someone wants to go on a leg day, just destroy themselves for 45 minutes taking Bulgarian split squats or RDLs to failure. Like, that's just miserable. So that's obviously one side of the coin in terms of what your goals are. But a couple other things we're going to talk about is exercise selection and recovery. Now, exercise selection will directly impact recovery. So if you're doing more lengthened movements, which I'll explain here in just a sec, that's going to cause a lot more fatigue on the body compared to doing like more of a shortened movement. So what are lengthened exercises? What are short exercises? Length exercises basically are where there's most tension at the bottom of the movement. So think of like an RDL, right? So if you stand up here, there's really no tension. You just hold the bar. Your grip strength is going to give out, but you're not really working your hamstring glutes. But at the bottom, in that lengthened stretch position, hamstring glutes, that's where the most tension is going to be. Or in a squat, same thing, that bottom position, and that's going to lengthen position there, where it's most challenging. Bench press, same thing, that bottom 10 mid position, where it's most challenging. So think of movements like that in terms of lengthen, and those movements are going to cause a ton of fatigue, and that's going to directly impact your recovery. And if you can't recover well enough in your workouts, it's simply going to affect, how much muscle you're building, potentially how much fat you're losing, your stress hormone cortisol can go up. So these are real things to consider. Now, short movements, these are movements where it's hardest basically at its contracted state. So think of like a lateral raise, right? Like you guys know, if you hold a pair of dumbbells right here in that extended position, you can hold that all day until your grip gives out. Right here, you can't hold that all day. That's more the short contracted position. Or one arm row. One arm row, if you're here, it's super easy. At the end, it's hard. Machine leg extension, easy at the bottom, hard at the finish. Hip thrust, easy at the bottom, hard at the top. Those are examples of short movements. And for those exercises, you can definitely push a little bit closer to failure because in those short movements, you're not accumulating as much fatigue to those exercises for your body. So that's something to consider as well. Now, kind of putting this into practical terms, so how would you really kind of set this up in terms of, okay, should I push a failure every set on those short movements? Should I do it once in a while? Should I avoid lengthened positions, pushing to failure every single time? For those lengthened positions, a couple things I'd say. I really wouldn't take it to failure for a couple of reasons. Number one, again, if you're an RDL, it's a pretty high impact exercise, right? Like, it can potentially hurt your back and so you want to make sure you're not going like too hard in that movement to begin with. And number two, of course, if you do push a failure, it's going to impact the recovery. And number three, you're going to ask yourself, like, how many reps are you doing? So believe it or not, it's actually easier to recover from like 5 to 8 reps of heavy weight opposed to like 10 to 12 reps, assuming the intensity is the same. So reps are something to consider as well. If you're like a lower rep scheme, you could probably obviously push a little closer to failure. If you're like a higher rep scheme, again, that's going to directly impact the recovery on your body. So long story short, about lengthened movements, I would either avoid it altogether or just mix it on your last set once in a while. Let's say it's like week 4 in your periodization phase in a month, you want to get a little more stimulus, go for it. Just obviously be careful. You don't want to push every single set to failure. To mix it in is okay though. For short positions, I would argue, let's say if you're doing like 3 or 4 sets, and let's say you got some decent experience, on your 3rd or 4th set, I would say there's nothing wrong pushing to failure, because failure too is gonna be different in the short position, right? Because like, let's say you can't get all the way up here for the lateral raise, you could probably still get to here. But if you're doing a squat, failure to squat is like you're not coming up, like you're gonna be stuck in the bottom position, which is not good. So that's something to consider as well, right? In a row, you might not get full range of motion, but you can kind of fail here. Bench press, if you're stuck, you're fucked. Excuse my language. But hopefully you see what I mean there in terms of pushing to failure and factors to consider when it comes to shorten and lengthen. So short position, mix them once in a while. There's nothing wrong with it. Lengthen positions, I would say try to minimize or avoid it altogether, because it does accumulate a lot of stress in the body, and there's just a better chance you're gonna hurt yourself, especially if you're doing those big compound movements. Hope that makes sense. I try to simplify as much as I can. I know I use a bit of anatomical terms there, but if you have any questions, just message in the YouTube video below. I'll get to them right away. I always respond. And if you want to check out my before and after on Instagram, I'll link my profile to the YouTube page, and you can check out the before and after and a bit about my story. It's the very first post on the pin on my profile, so you'll kind of see it if you go there. Thanks for watching. Hope this is helpful. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. We'll talk soon.